All this talk about ICE these days is reminding me how much I appreciate Dawud Wharnsby. You might be wondering what the modern day Gestapo has to do with a Muslim songwriter and a children's nasheed artist. I strongly believe that one of the core components and core elements of an Islamic upbringing in the West are and were the nasheeds of Dawud Wharnsby. May Allah preserve him. If you grew up Muslim in the West and haven't heard his music, I feel so deeply sorry for you. You've really been deprived of something special because his work is such a remarkable collection of beauty and artistic depth and meaning. He really invented a genre. There are few people like him at that time or even today that come close. Of course, there's Yusuf Islam, Zain Bika, and today we have Sheikh Abdullah Misra, but he still stands out. Unfortunately, most of the Muslim singers today are just pop singers with some Islamic lyrics. But Dawud Wharnsby is different. His songs are incredibly meaningful. And he's also such a beautiful personality. I only had the opportunity to meet him a few times, twice as a child and once as a young adult. But I consider him one of my first parents, one of my first teachers alongside my parents, because his songs were so meaningful to me. I've heard someone say, and I say myself, that Dawud Wharnsby was the poet of my formative years. So much of my identity and understanding of Islam and appreciation of Islam came through his songs and his music. May Allah elevate him and count him amongst the awliya. A few months ago, I was actually working on a project called Soundscapes of a Muslim Childhood. This is a comprehensive compilation of over 2,000 nasheeds, qasidas, and songs from over 70 Muslim artists, primarily in the English language, but in other languages as well. And this is meant to be something that Muslim children can grow up to in the West. Now, this collection includes everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, things I'm not even the biggest fan of. But I have another collection that's a derivative of this one called Essentials, which is really just the best writing and the best work. Dawud Wharnsby is at the top of both of these lists, and basically every single one of his nasheeds is in the Essentials as well. If you have younger siblings or you have children, you're more than welcome to check out these playlists. You can find them on my website, masood.me/soundscapes. So a lot of people know Dawud Wharnsby for his children's nasheeds, which are so meaningful and inspiring, even as an adult. And in many ways, they get better as you grow up. But his collection is actually much larger than that, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. His first album and some of his later albums are not strictly religious or Islamic, but they're such beautiful reflections on life and humanity. Some of the best songwriting I've come across, hands down, whether in the Muslim sphere or not. But the reason he comes to mind in the context of ICE and recently is because of a song of his from 2 decades ago, which has aged so perfectly and is so incredibly relevant today. The song is called Welcome to the I.C.E, or Welcome to ICE, which is just a very childish and silly parody of ICE. And this was actually my first time as a young child, hearing about ICE or learning about ICE. If you haven't heard it, I would recommend you check it out. Dawud Wharnsby really falls into the tradition of the likes of Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie. He actually writes about the influence that Pete Seeger had on him. I remember reading a blog post when Pete Seeger passed away in 2014, and he was writing about the influence that Pete Seeger had on him. And as I was reading it, I was struck because that's really very much the influence that Dawud Wharnsby had on me. These folk singers are incredible songwriters and musical talents, but they're also countercultural, and they use music not just as entertainment, but as a form of protest, a form of activism, a way to bring people together. They provide commentary on the situation of the world and criticism of the powers that be in fun and creative ways. I once asked Dawud Wharnsby to actually share a list of songwriters that had an influence on him, and we didn't have any paper, so he actually gifted me one of his albums and wrote the list of songwriters on it. If you haven't heard Pete Seeger or Guthrie, I really encourage that you do, of course, in addition to Dawud Wharnsby if you haven't. But this aspect of Dawud Wharnsby's music being an extension of the Western folk music tradition with a deeply Muslim ethos makes me appreciate him even more, especially when he's trashing ICE in a children's song from over 2 decades ago. I hope there are others who appreciate him or grow to appreciate him the way that I do.